It was a raw March morning in the year 1889 when a telegram arrived at 221B Baker Street 1 that would, within a fortnight, carry Sherlock Holmes and myself across the Indian Ocean. I had come downstairs to find Holmes already dressed. He stood before the fire, a yellow telegram held loosely between two fingers, his gaze fixed upon the flames with that peculiar stillness which, in him, signified not idleness, but the fiercest concentration. "Watson," he did not turn. "How much do you know of the Anglo-Oriental Steam Navigation Company?" "Very little. Passenger and cargo lines to India, I believe, and beyond to the Far East." "Just so." Holmes unfolded the telegram. "Their flagship, the Coromandel, sails from Bombay in 9 days, bound for London by way of Aden and Suez. Aboard her will travel one Sir Reginald Ashworth Blake, a tea and indigo merchant of considerable fortune. And what has he done to attract your attention?" "Nothing." Holmes looked toward me at last. "Someone else has done it for him." He handed me the telegram. "During the last month, Sir Reginald has received 3 letters threatening his life. Each was posted from a different port. Each was written in a disguised hand, and each contained a single pressed tea leaf." I raised my eyebrows. "A curious calling card." "Curious indeed." Holmes took back the telegram. "Sir Reginald has refused to involve the police. He is a man who prizes his reputation for imperturbability above almost everything else. However, his solicitor, an old client of mine named Josiah Wren, has persuaded him to accept the quiet assistance of a physician and a private investigator during the voyage home." "You mean us?" "We are to travel under assumed identities." Holmes's eyes gleamed. "You, Watson, will be Dr. Hamish Trevor, a relief medical officer attached to the company. I shall be Mr. Sherlock Ormond, a gentleman naturalist collecting specimens along the Red Sea coast. And our true purpose? Known only to the captain and Sir Reginald." I confess my pulse quickened. "You believe the threats are genuine?" "I believe nothing yet." Holmes returned his attention to the fire. "And that, Watson, is precisely why I find them interesting." He unfolded the telegram again. 3 letters, 3 ports. Kolkata, Colombo, and Aden. All 3 are ports at which vessels of the Anglo-Oriental line call. "You think the writer is following the shipping routes?" "Either that, or the coincidence is extraordinary." Holmes turned toward me. "Pack for a fortnight at sea, Watson, and bring your revolver." "My revolver?" "I have a feeling we shall require it." Within the hour, we were on our way. As our cab rattled through the damp London streets, I found myself experiencing that peculiar exhilaration which only Sherlock Holmes could summon from the driest collection of facts. A telegram, a shipping timetable, 3 threatening letters, a pressed tea leaf, and somewhere beneath those seemingly disconnected details lay a serpent of human wickedness, coiled patiently in the darkness. All that remained was for Holmes to draw it into the light. "You have said nothing," I remarked, "of why Mr. Wren applied to you rather than Scotland Yard." "Because Sir Reginald applied to you rather than Scotland Yard. Because Sir Reginald has expressly forbidden any appearance of an official investigation aboard his vessel. A strange condition." "Not strange at all. He fears that a visible inquiry would damage his reputation more severely than the threats themselves." "And you agreed?" "I did." "Why?" Holmes smiled. "Because a crime aboard a ship presents a problem quite unlike a crime committed in London." "How so?" "A fixed population, Watson. A finite number of suspects. No possibility of escape before the vessel reaches port, and an isolation that concentrates opportunity, fear, desperation, and suspicion into a very small space." He leaned back. "I have long wished to test my methods upon such a stage." "So you relish the commission?" "I relish any problem that promises to engage the whole of my faculties." He paused. "London has become rather too familiar with my methods. Criminals read newspapers, Watson. They learn, and this voyage?" Holmes's expression hardened into anticipation. "This voyage promises a change of scenery." Then, after a moment, "and perhaps a problem worthy of the journey. We reach Bombay after nearly 3 weeks of travel." I shall not weary the reader with the heat of the Suez Canal, the crowded compartments of the overland mail, or Holmes's extraordinary insistence upon cataloging 17 varieties of gull between Aden and the Malabar coast. It is enough to say that we arrived 4 days before the Coromandel was due to sail. I had hoped Holmes might spend those days exploring the bazaars or enjoying the cooler government gardens. He did neither. Instead, he spent hour after hour with Mr. Wren's Bombay agent, a nervous gentleman named Mr. Cares, examining the passenger manifest of the vessel upon which we were soon to embark. On the evening before sailing, Holmes laid the document upon the hotel table. 41 first-class passengers, Watson. He tapped the page. Of these, 11 have some connection, however remote, with Sir Reginald's business affairs. I studied the list. Lady Ashworth Blake, his wife. Yes. Edmund Carow, partner in the firm. Yes. Perkle Hale, private secretary. Holmes nodded. Dr. Julius Fenwick, ship surgeon. Curiously listed as a passenger rather than crew. Exactly. And Aurelio Vasconcelos, merchant of Goa. Holmes leaned back. I cannot yet tell you which of them matters. You suspect them all? No. He smiled faintly. I intend to watch them all. Tomorrow, Watson, our true work begins. The Coromandel lay at anchor in Bombay Harbor like some enormous iron swan. Her twin funnels sent lazy columns of smoke into a sky the color of beaten brass. Brass fittings gleamed beneath the morning sun, awnings stretched across the upper decks, and stewards moved rapidly among trunks, hat boxes, traveling cases, and mountains of luggage belonging to the wealthy passengers preparing for the voyage home. Holmes, now transformed into Mr. Sherlock Ormond, wore a pale linen suit and carried a battered collecting case. I knew, of course, that the case contained not a single specimen. It contained paper ink, a magnifying lens, and several other objects Holmes considered more useful than natural history. I had become Dr. Hamish Trevor. My supposed position as a relief medical officer gave me an excellent excuse to move freely throughout the vessel. At the gangway we were met by Captain Josiah Halloway, a broad-shouldered Yorkshireman whose expression suggested that he had already regretted agreeing to this arrangement. "Gentlemen," he said quietly as he escorted us aboard, "I've never had cause to smuggle a detective onto my own ship before." Holmes smiled. "Then let us hope it remains an educational experience, Captain." "I'd sooner it remained uneventful. I fear we may not have that luxury." Captain Halloway glanced around before lowering his voice. "Mr. Wren's letter explained everything. Sir Reginald is a passenger of consequence, and if mischief is intended toward him, I'd sooner see it caught than committed. Our cabins? 9 and 10, besides Sir Reginald's suite on the promenade deck. Excellent." Holmes paused. "And Sir Reginald himself? A hard man in business by all accounts. Civil enough at table. Frightened?" The captain hesitated. "I think so, though he would never admit it. Not if you held a pistol to his head." Holmes's eyes sharpened. "Not if you held a pistol to his head." Holmes's eyes sharpened. "He has asked twice whether his cabin door can be barred from within. And can it?" "It can. A stout bolt was fitted at his own expense before this voyage." Holmes nodded slowly. "A bolt fitted at his own expense." He glanced at me. "That is a fact worth remembering, Watson. Our cabins were small but efficiently arranged. A berth, a washstand, a writing table, and a single porthole through which the fading lights of Bombay shimmered upon the darkening water. Holmes spent the better part of an hour walking the promenade deck. He studied every companionway, every lifeboat, every corridor, every position at which a passenger might disappear from view. He noted the smoking room, the library, the writing room, the saloon, and the hours at which the stewards changed their watches. When he finally returned, I was waiting for him. "Well?" Holmes removed his coat. "A ship, Watson, is a village afloat." He looked toward the corridor. 60 or 70 souls forced to share the same enclosed world for weeks at a time. Every corridor becomes familiar. Every door is known. Every routine becomes predictable. And that makes murder easier? In some respects, he paused, and harder, because there is nowhere to escape. Precisely. That evening we dined in the Grand Saloon. It was there that I first saw the principal actors in the strange drama that awaited us. Sir Reginald Ashworth. Blake sat at the captain's table. He was a heavy-built man of approximately 55, with small watchful eyes and a face that had clearly once been handsome, but had hardened with age and wealth. Beside him sat Lady Cordelia, Blake his wife. She was perhaps 20 years younger than her husband, pale, dark-haired, beautiful, and carrying an expression of controlled unhappiness that appeared so familiar upon her features that I wondered whether she had worn it for years. Further down the table sat Edmund Carow, Sir Reginald's business partner. He was lean and sharp-featured, with restless hands that seemed incapable of remaining still. Beside him sat Perkle Hale, Sir Reginald's private secretary. Hale was younger than I had expected, fair-haired, well-dressed, careful in his speech. But there was something watchful about him, something that suggested he was constantly measuring the people around him. Across from them sat Dr. Julius Fenwick, a stout and jovial physician whose ruddy complexion suggested years spent in tropical climates. And at the far end of the table sat Aurelio Vasconcelos, a dark and elegant merchant from Goa. He spoke little, but he observed everything. Later that evening, Holmes and I walked upon the deck beneath a sky blazing with unfamiliar stars. A fine gathering of suspects, Holmes murmured. You truly suspect one of them? I suspect nothing. He stopped beside the rail. But somewhere among them, Watson, unless I am very much mistaken, there is a person who has already resolved upon murder. You believe it will happen aboard this ship? Holmes looked out across the black water. I believe a man who threatens another across 3 ports of call is not a man who idles. He turned toward me. He has chosen his moment carefully. And that moment is this voyage? I am beginning to think so. The Coromandel sounded her first great whistle. The voyage had begun, and somewhere aboard that ship, a murderer was already waiting. I was afforded my first private interview with Sir Reginald on the second day out. The occasion was ostensibly a medical consultation. In truth, I had arranged it because I wished to see the man without the watchful eyes of his wife, his secretary, or his business partner upon him. Sir Reginald seized upon the opportunity with evident relief. It was almost as though he had been waiting for someone to whom he could speak without fear of being overheard. His stateroom was the finest aboard the Coromandel. Heavy mahogany fittings lined the walls. A Turkish carpet covered the floor. Upon a small writing desk stood several leather-bound volumes, so immaculate that I suspected they had been purchased more for appearance than for reading. Sir Reginald sat beside the porthole with a rug across his knees, despite the warmth of the morning. What struck me immediately was the pallor beneath his ruddy complexion, and his eyes. Every few moments they traveled toward the cabin door, as though he expected someone to enter. "You will forgive me, Doctor," he said, once I had drawn the curtain and we were alone. "If I appear a nervous man, I have observed no such thing. I am not nervous by nature." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Ask anyone in Mincing Lane. They will tell you Ashworth Blake never lost a night's sleep over a bad market in 30 years of trade." He leaned toward the desk. "But these letters," his voice dropped, "these damnable letters." From a locked drawer he produced a small tin box. The key came from his watch chain. He opened it. Inside lay 3 folded pieces of paper. Each bore a single dried tea leaf. I examined the first. "You have taken what was not yours." The second read, "The debt falls due at sea." The third was shorter still. "There is no shore beyond this one." The handwriting was cramped and deliberately distorted. "Have you any notion, Sir Reginald," I asked, "what debt is meant?" His eyes shifted away. "None whatever. You have wronged no man?" "Not knowingly." He sat straighter. "A merchant makes enemies, Doctor. Disappointed rivals, dismissed clerks. Planters who believe their crop undervalued. Partners who think themselves entitled to more than the ledger allows." He waved a hand. "I could name a dozen men who might bear a grudge. And yet you believe none capable of sending these letters?" "No." "Why?" His face hardened. "Because a man may hate another without wishing him dead. A reasonable distinction." He looked at me sharply. "You are questioning me rather more than most physicians would." "I am a physician who prefers accurate diagnoses." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I said, "You had a special bolt fitted to your cabin door." His expression changed, only slightly, but I noticed it. A precaution. "You expected trouble before this voyage began?" "I expected nothing." "Then why the bolt?" "I am a careful man, Doctor." He closed the tin box. "I have survived 30 years in business by being careful." He returned the letters to their place. Then, almost pleadingly, he added, "I would take it as a kindness if you said nothing of this to my wife." "Lady Blake?" "Yes." His voice softened. "She has a delicate constitution. I would not have her alarmed." There was something strange in the request, not merely concern, something closer to shame. I pressed him once more. "You said, Sir Reginald, that you have wronged no man that you are aware of." His eyes rose to meet mine. For a moment I saw something behind them, not fear of the letters, something older, something buried. "A man's career of 30 years is a long road," I continued. "Few men walk such a road without a stumble or two that conscience may judge more harshly than the ledger." His jaw tightened. "Every man of business has failures and regrets." "Yes." He looked toward the sea. "I do not say I have been a saint in the counting house." "But regret is not crime, Doctor." His voice became colder. "A hard bargain fairly struck, however painful to the losing party, is not murder waiting to happen 30 years later." There it was, 30 years. I had not mentioned that number. Sir Reginald had. I rose. "I understand." He looked relieved. "And you will say nothing?" "Your confidence is safe with me." I left the cabin. But I had heard enough. That evening I repeated the conversation to Holmes. That evening I repeated the conversation to Holmes. He sat beside the porthole, his fingertips pressed together, his eyes half closed. "You have taken what was not yours," he repeated. "Exactly. Not you owe me." He opened his eyes. "Not you have wronged me." He paused. "But taken." "You attach significance to the word?" "Great significance." Holmes rose and walked slowly across the cabin. "It speaks of theft, Watson, not merely injury. And the phrase 'the debt falls due at sea,' a curious expression. You think the letter's genuine?" "I think the writer knows Sir Reginald." Holmes stopped. "And I think the tea leaf tells us more than the words." "How?" "A madman signs his threats with blood, symbols, elaborate ciphers." He tapped the table. "This is different." His eyes narrowed. "It is almost commercial." "Commercial?" "A man of business addressing another man of business." He smiled faintly. "Someone means to remind Sir Reginald of a transaction." "And the tea?" "His trade." Holmes picked up his pipe. "Or the evidence of it." The following morning I encountered Perkle Hale in the library. He was alone. A ledger lay open before him. The moment he saw me, he closed it. "You are early, Doctor." "So are you." "I find the mornings quiet." His smile was polite, but there was tension behind it. I glanced at the ledger. "Business?" "Routine correspondence." "For Sir Reginald?" "Among other things." He rose. "Will you excuse me?" "Of course." He took 3 steps toward the door, then stopped. "Doctor." "Yes?" "If you happen to hear anything concerning Sir Reginald," he hesitated, "I would advise you not to repeat it." I studied him. "That sounds rather like advice from a man who knows something." His expression remained composed. "I know only that wealthy men attract unpleasant attention." "And threatening letters?" A pause. "I have heard of them." "From Sir Reginald?" "No." "From whom, then?" Hale smiled. "Ships are small communities, Doctor. News travels quickly." He left. I remained in the library for some minutes. When I finally found Holmes, he was standing at the stern with a notebook in his hand. Hale spoke to me. "Did he?" "He warned me not to repeat anything concerning Sir Reginald." Holmes's eyebrows rose. "Interesting. I believe he knows more than he admits." "I agree. Do you suspect him?" Holmes looked toward the horizon. "I suspect everyone who knows too much." He closed his notebook. "But Hale is different." "How?" "He has information." "About the letters?" "Perhaps." "And if he does?" Holmes's expression became thoughtful. "Then the question is not merely who wishes Sir Reginald dead." He looked at me. It is who benefits from keeping Sir Reginald frightened. That afternoon, Lady Cordelia, Blake approached me. She did so while the other passengers were gathered on the promenade deck. Dr. Trevor? Yes, Lady Blake. May I speak with you privately? Certainly. We walked toward the far end of the deck. For several moments she said nothing. Then, my husband is frightened. I had noticed. He will never admit it. No. She looked toward the sea. He has become worse since we left Bombay. Worse? More watchful. Her voice dropped. He locks his door at night. He checks the corridor before leaving his cabin. He asks me questions about people I barely know. Does he believe someone aboard intends to kill him? I don't know what he believes. She looked at me. But I know what he fears. What? The past. The words were almost a whisper. I waited. She continued. There was a man in Kolkata. Who? Josiah Hale. The name caught my attention. What happened to him? I know very little. That is not what I expected. She gave a bitter smile. I know that my husband was once his business partner. I felt a chill despite the tropical air. And now? The partnership ended badly. Why? I have never been told. Did Sir Reginald ruin him? Lady, Blake looked away. I did not say that, but you believe it. She remained silent. Then, Perkle knows. Hale? Yes. He knew Josiah Hale? Perkle Hale was his nephew. For a moment I thought I had misunderstood her. His nephew? She nodded. And yet he works for Sir Reginald? Yes. That is remarkable. It is more remarkable than you know. She turned toward me. Perkle came into my husband's employment 2 years ago. Did Sir Reginald know who he was? Of course. Then why employ him? I have often wondered. Before I could ask another question, Lady Blake stepped away. You must forget this conversation, Doctor. I am not certain I can. You must try. She walked back toward the saloon. I remained alone. Josiah Hale, Perkle Hale, Sir Reginald Blake, and a business partnership that had ended 30 years earlier. The pieces were beginning to form a pattern, but I could not yet see the whole picture. That evening I told Holmes everything. He listened without interruption. When I finished, he sat very still. Then he said, There, Watson. What? Our thread, he rose. Betancourt and Hale, who were they? Sir Reginald's original business partners. Holmes paced slowly. The partnership dissolved under unpleasant circumstances. And Perkle Hale was the nephew of the ruined partner. Exactly. He turned toward me. Now ask yourself why a shrewd businessman would take into his innermost confidence the nephew of a man he had wronged. Perhaps Hale knew nothing of the old quarrel. Possible. Or Sir Reginald wanted to keep him close. Holmes smiled. Or Sir Reginald wanted to keep him close. Holmes smiled. Better. Better? A potential enemy is easier to watch from inside your own house than from outside it. He returned to his chair. I think Perkle Hale spent 2 years in Sir Reginald's employment gathering evidence. Evidence of what? The ruin of his uncle. And the letters? Holmes's face hardened. That is the difficulty. He leaned toward me. A blackmailer does not ordinarily murder himself. No. And therefore, Watson, we are left with the most important question. Who wished Perkle Hale silenced? Holmes looked toward the closed cabin door. And did that person act to protect Sir Reginald? He paused. Or to destroy him? On the 7th day, as the Coromandel steamed steadily toward Aden, Holmes obtained what he later called the first real purchase upon the case. His target was Edmund Caro. Holmes approached him as a fellow enthusiast of the tea trade. It was an extraordinary performance. The previous evening he had spent several hours in the ship's small library studying the mechanics of tea purchasing, shipping insurance, Indian plantations, and the commercial routes between Kolkata and London. By breakfast, he knew enough to sound like a merchant himself. We sat with Caro on the shaded side of the promenade deck. Holmes lit a cigar. You have been Sir Reginald's partner from the beginning, I collect. Near enough. Karasmiled. I joined him 3 years after the firm was established. And profitable? Very. His fingers moved restlessly against the arm of his chair. Sir Reginald and I have done well together. I understand there was an earlier partnership. Caro's fingers stopped. Earlier partnership? Yes. The Hale concern. A silence followed. It lasted perhaps 2 seconds. But Holmes noticed. Ancient history, Caro said. Of course. Holmes smiled. Though curious that such an arrangement should end so disastrously. Business does. Indeed. Caro reached for his cigar, but his hand was unsteady. You seem unusually interested in old commercial failures, Mr. Ormond. I am a student of commerce. Are you? Holmes laughed. Only as an amateur. Caro looked at him carefully. Then his expression relaxed. The past is the past. Quite. But when we returned to our cabin later that afternoon, Holmes's face was serious. He lied. About the partnership? Not entirely. What did he conceal? That is precisely what I intend to discover. He opened his notebook. Caro knew the Hales. And, more importantly, he is uncomfortable whenever they are mentioned. Holmes closed the notebook. Men rarely fear dead history unless the dead have left something behind. It happened before dawn. I was awakened by 3 sharp knocks upon my door. When I opened it, I found Captain Halloway standing in the corridor. His face was grim. Doctor, what has happened? It's Hale. My heart sank. What about him? He's dead. Within minutes, I was outside Perkle Hale's cabin. A small crowd had gathered. Captain Halloway pushed them back. No one enters. Holmes arrived moments later. He said nothing. He merely looked at the door. Then at the corridor. Then at me. Locked. From within. Windows. 1 porthole. Open. Closed. Holmes entered. Hale lay beside his writing desk. One hand rested upon the carpet. The other was clenched. There was no obvious wound. No overturned furniture. No sign of struggle. Upon the desk stood a half-empty glass. Holmes examined it. Then the dead man's hand. Then the lock. Watson. Yes. Look at the door. I examined it. What am I looking for? The impossible. Holmes smiled faintly. The door was locked from inside. Yes. And yet the murderer entered. I stared at him. You cannot know that. No. He pointed toward the floor. But I know Hale did not lock the door himself. Beside the bed lay a small brass key. Holmes picked it up. Interesting. What is it? The wrong key. The wrong key? This opens nothing aboard the ship. He turned it between his fingers, which means someone wanted us to believe it did. Then Holmes looked toward the dead man's clenched fist. There, between his fingers, was a tiny fragment of paper, and upon it, a single dried tea leaf. The discovery of Perkle Hale's body cast a silence over the Coromandel unlike anything I had experienced upon a ship. Passengers who had only the previous evening exchanged pleasantries with him now stood whispering in corners. Doors remained closed. Conversations stopped whenever footsteps approached. And everywhere one looked, there was the same question in the eyes of the passengers. Who had killed him? Holmes, however, seemed less interested in the question of who than in the question of how. He remained inside Hale's cabin long after Captain Halloway had ordered everyone else from the room. I stood beside him. The dead man's body had been removed, but nothing else had been disturbed. Holmes examined the desk once more, then the writing materials, then the wastepaper basket. Finally, he turned his attention to the cabin walls. You find something? Perhaps. He pointed toward the desk. Look carefully. I bent over it. At first I saw nothing. Then I noticed a faint indentation upon the blotting paper. Someone had written upon a sheet that had later been removed. Holmes placed a thin piece of paper over the blotter and rubbed the surface gently with the side of a pencil. Gradually, the impression became visible. Several words emerged. Kolkata, December, Hale and Blake, and beneath them, the figures are not the same. I looked at Holmes. What does it mean? I don't know yet. He folded the paper. But Hale was keeping accounts. Of Sir Reginald's business? Apparently. Holmes glanced toward the locked door. And someone killed him before he could finish whatever he had begun. That afternoon, Captain Halloway called a meeting of the senior officers. Holmes and I attended. So did Dr. Fenwick, Edmund Caro, and Sir Reginald. The captain stood at the head of the table. "Gentlemen, until we reach Aden, I intend to keep this matter strictly contained." Sir Reginald immediately objected. "Contained? A man has been murdered aboard my ship." "And precisely why," said the captain, "we shall avoid panic." Sir Reginald's face reddened. "This is an outrage." Holmes had remained silent. Then he spoke. "Sir Reginald." "What?" "Where were you between midnight and 4 this morning?" The room became still. Sir Reginald stared at him. "You presume rather a lot, Mr. Ormond. I ask a simple question. I was in my cabin." "Alone?" "Yes." "Can anyone confirm it?" Sir Reginald's expression darkened. "No." Holmes nodded. "I see. You suspect me?" "I suspect everyone." Sir Reginald rose abruptly. "This is intolerable." Holmes did not move. "Then perhaps you can explain why Hale possessed an account relating to your business dealings in Kolkata." Sir Reginald froze. "What account?" "The one he was examining shortly before his death." For the first time, I saw genuine fear in Sir Reginald's face. Not surprise, not anger, fear. "You have no right." Holmes interrupted him. "You know precisely what I mean." Sir Reginald sat down again. His voice was barely audible. "The past should remain buried." Holmes leaned forward. "Then someone has gone to considerable trouble to dig it up." Dr. Fenwick conducted the first proper examination of Hale's remains. When he emerged from the medical cabin, his usually jovial expression had vanished. "You are correct, doctor," he said to me. "About what? Poison?" Holmes appeared behind me. "About what? Poison?" Holmes appeared behind me. "What poison?" Fenwick hesitated. "Quinine." "Quinine?" "The active poison found in hemlock." I looked at Holmes. "How was it administered?" "The glass," Fenwick replied. Holmes shook his head. "No." Fenwick frowned. "You are certain?" "Yes." "Why?" Holmes pointed toward the evidence table. "The glass contained traces." "Then surely—" "The poison was not intended for him to drink." Fenwick stared at him. "Explain." Holmes lifted the glass carefully. "Look at the rim. There was a faint residue, almost invisible. But the concentration is uneven," Holmes continued. "The poison was applied to the lip of the glass." Fenwick's expression changed. "Then Hale was poisoned when he drank." "Exactly," I said. "But if someone prepared the glass, they must have entered the cabin." Holmes smiled. "Unless they did not." I understood. The glass was already there. Precisely. So the murderer had access to Hale's cabin before he went to bed. Or Hale himself brought the glass from somewhere else. Holmes placed it down. "That gives us several possibilities. Who served him?" "Not the steward." "How do you know?" "Because the steward was seen at the dining saloon after midnight." Holmes looked at me. "And that gives us our first useful contradiction." "What contradiction?" "Hale was seen entering his cabin at 11:40. "Yes." "He was alive." "Yes." "But the steward claims he delivered the glass at 11:15. I stared at him. "Then Hale could not have received it from him." "Correct." Holmes smiled. "Someone is lying. Lady Cordelia came to my cabin after midnight. She knocked softly. When I opened the door, she was visibly distressed. 'Doctor, I must speak with you.' 'Of course.' She entered. For several moments she stood without speaking. Then she said, 'My husband knows that I am afraid.' 'Afraid of what?' 'Of him.' I was taken aback. 'Sir Reginald?' She nodded. 'Not because he has threatened me.' 'Then why?' 'Because of what he did in Kolkata.' The words seemed to cost her great effort. 'What did he do?' 'I don't know the whole story.' 'But you know enough.' 'Yes.' She sat down. 'My husband was not always the man you see now.' I suspected as much. He was younger, poorer, ambitious. She looked toward the door. There were 3 men. 'Sir Reginald?' 'Yes.' 'Who were the others?' 'Josiah Hale,' she swallowed, 'and Aurelio Vasconcelos.' I felt a chill. 'Vasconcelos?' 'Yes.' 'The merchant aboard this ship?' 'Yes.' 'Then all 3 knew one another 30 years ago?' 'They were partners.' 'In Kolkata?' She nodded. 'What happened?' 'I don't know. But something happened. Something terrible. She lowered her voice. One of them disappeared. Who? Josiah Hale. But his nephew is aboard this ship. Yes. And he came to work for Sir Reginald. Exactly. I stood. Why? Lady Cordelia looked at me with tears in her eyes. To discover the truth. When I told Holmes, he said nothing for several seconds. Then he walked to the window. So, what? Vasconcelos? He was one of them. 30 years ago. Yes. Holmes smiled grimly. Then our passenger list is becoming much more interesting. You believe Vasconcelos is involved in Hale's murder? I believe he has a history with the victim's family. And Sir Reginald. Holmes picked up his coat. Watson. Yes? We have been looking at this case from the wrong direction. What do you mean? We assumed the letters were the beginning. He opened the door. They are not. What then? The letters are the end of a story that began 30 years ago. The following morning, Holmes disappeared. For 6 hours, I had no idea where he had gone. Captain Halloway told me Holmes had been seen near the cargo hold. A steward claimed he had gone toward the engine room. Another passenger insisted he had been on the upper deck. All of them were wrong. Holmes returned shortly after luncheon. His clothes were stained with oil. His collecting case was missing. You have been busy. Very. Where? In the one place aboard this vessel where nobody thought to look. And that is? The cargo office. He opened his case. Inside was a leather-bound ledger. I stared. Where did you get that? It was concealed beneath a false panel. Whose ledger? Holmes opened it. Beneath a false panel. Whose ledger? Holmes opened it. The first page bore 3 names: Ashworth Blake, Josiah Hale, Aurelio Vasconcelos. My heart quickened. What does it contain? Accounts. T? He turned several pages. Then he pointed. Look here. A series of shipments. Kolkata, Bombay, Colombo, Aden. But the quantities did not match the official records. Smuggling? Perhaps. Fraud? Certainly. Holmes turned another page. There. A handwritten entry had been crossed out, but beneath the ink one could still read. 27 chests removed before inspection. Who removed them? Holmes shook his head. That is what we must discover. And Josiah Hale? Holmes pointed to the margin. Beside the entry was a single initial, J.H. Then another note. He threatened to expose them. I looked up. Holmes, he closed the ledger. Now we know why someone is afraid. Because Hale discovered the fraud? More than that. He tapped the cover. Someone killed Josiah Hale 30 years ago, and now his nephew has been killed. Holmes's expression was grim. Unless I am mistaken, Watson? He looked toward the sea. The same crime has claimed its second victim. That night, Holmes instructed me to remain awake. Why? Because our murderer has become nervous. How can you know? Someone searched my cabin. I stared at him. When? While we were at dinner. Did they find anything? They found nothing. Then why are you certain they searched it? Holmes smiled. Because I left the room in a particular condition. He pointed toward the writing desk. A piece of thread was placed beneath the drawer. It was gone. Clever. Not clever enough. At 1 o'clock we heard footsteps. Slow. Measured. Approaching from the far end of the corridor. Holmes extinguished the lamp. We waited. The footsteps stopped outside Hale's cabin. Then came the faint sound of a key entering the lock. Holmes opened the door. A figure fled into the darkness. I followed. We raced along the corridor. Down the stairs. Past the smoking room. The figure disappeared through a service passage. Holmes stopped. He looked at the floor. A small object lay there. A silver cufflink, engraved with 2 letters. Aurelio Vasconcelos, I whispered. Holmes picked it up. Perhaps. He looked at me. A murderer does not usually leave his name behind. Then someone wants us to suspect him. Exactly. Holmes's eyes narrowed. And that, Watson, may be the most important clue we have yet. At dawn, another letter was delivered. This one was addressed to Sir Reginald. He opened it with trembling hands. Holmes stood beside him. Sir Reginald read the message. His face went white. What does it say? I asked. He handed it to Holmes. The paper contained only one sentence. One debt has been paid, one remains. Holmes read it twice. Then he looked at Sir Reginald. Who is the second debt? Sir Reginald said nothing. Holmes stepped closer. Sir Reginald? Still nothing. Who? At last the older man whispered. Me. The room fell silent. Holmes folded the letter. Then I believe, Sir Reginald, that we have very little time. Outside, the great engines of the Coromandel continued their relentless rhythm. The sea stretched endlessly around us. And somewhere aboard the ship, our murderer was preparing to strike again. The warning had changed everything. Until that moment, we had been investigating a murder committed in the darkness of the past. Now we knew the killer intended to continue. Sir Reginald remained seated beside the writing desk, staring at the letter Holmes had placed before him. One debt remains, he whispered. Holmes watched him carefully. You know who wrote it. No. Then you know what it means. Sir Reginald's hands tightened around the arms of his chair. I told you, Mr. Ormond. The past should remain buried. Unfortunately, someone aboard this ship disagrees. Holmes turned toward me. Watson, I want you to remain with Sir Reginald. And you? I have an appointment. With whom? Holmes smiled. With a ghost. He left before I could question him further. I remained with Sir Reginald. For nearly 20 minutes, neither of us spoke. Then came a knock. Sir Reginald nearly jumped from his chair. Who is it? A voice answered from outside. Caro. Sir Reginald's face changed. Do not let him in. I looked at him. Why? Because he knows. Knows what? But before he could answer, the door opened. Edmund Caro stood in the doorway. His face was pale. I must speak with you. Sir Reginald rose. You have no business here. I know what happened in Kolkata. The words struck the room like a pistol shot. Sir Reginald went completely still. Caro looked toward me. Doctor, you should leave. I think I shall remain. Caro swallowed. Then he looked at Sir Reginald. Josiah Hale did not disappear. Sir Reginald's lips parted. He was murdered. Silence. Who killed him? I asked. Neither man answered. Then Caro whispered. 3 men knew the truth. Who? Caro looked directly at Sir Reginald. Blake. He turned toward himself. Me? Then he said the final name. Vasconcelos. Caro closed the door. His hands were shaking. We were young, he said. 30 years ago, Kolkata was a different place. Sir Reginald stared at him. Stop. No. Caro's voice strengthened. We have hidden this long enough. He turned toward me. Josiah Hale discovered that shipments were being diverted. Tea shipments? Yes. By whom? Caro looked at Sir Reginald. By all 3 of us. Sir Reginald slammed his fist against the desk. You fool! Caro ignored him. The official record showed one quantity. The actual cargo was larger. The difference was sold privately. And Hale discovered it? Yes. What did he intend to do? Expose us? I asked. Then what happened? Caro lowered his eyes. We confronted him, and... He threatened to go to the authorities. Sir Reginald spoke. He would have destroyed us. Caro looked at him. You destroyed him. The room became silent. I stared at Sir Reginald. Did you kill Josiah Hale? Sir Reginald did not answer. Caro did. We did. My blood ran cold. You 3? Caro nodded. Not exactly as you imagine. What happened? We met him at the warehouse. He had the ledger. He refused to surrender it. And then? Caro's voice broke. There was an argument. Who struck him? Vasconcelos. With what? Caro looked away. A brass weight. Sir Reginald closed his eyes. He died. No. Caro's answer was He died. No. Caro's answer was barely audible. He was alive. I stared at him. Then what did you do? Caro looked at Sir Reginald. We left him there. A terrible silence followed. You abandoned a wounded man? We believed someone would find him, but no one did. No. Caro wiped his forehead. By morning he was dead. I could scarcely speak. And you concealed the crime? Yes. For 30 years? Yes. The cabin door suddenly opened. Holmes stood there. I thought as much. Cat spun around. How long have you been listening? Long enough. Holmes entered. He looked at Sir Reginald. You should have told me this on the first day. Sir Reginald said nothing. Holmes turned toward Caro. Where is Vasconcelos? Caro's face drained of color. I don't know. Holmes smiled. Then we must find him. Vasconcelos' cabin was empty. His luggage remained. His clothes remained. His passport remained. But the man himself was gone. Holmes examined the room carefully. Watson, yes. Look here. Upon the writing desk lay a map. It showed the Red Sea. Several locations had been marked in pencil. Aden, Suez, Port said. And one point in the middle of the sea. I frowned. That means nothing. Not necessarily. Holmes studied the map. Look at the dates. Beside each location was a number, not a date, a time. These are ship schedules. Then Vasconcelos intended to leave the Coromandel. Yes, but how? Holmes pointed toward the lower corner. There was a note. Boat number 4215 a.m. My heart quickened. He intends to escape. Holmes nodded. Tonight. At 2 o'clock we waited near the lifeboats. The sea was almost completely black. The moon had disappeared behind clouds. Only the faint glow of the deck lamps illuminated the railings. Holmes stood motionless. I held my revolver beneath my coat. Then came a sound. A rope sliding through a pulley. Holmes raised one hand. We waited. A shadow appeared. Vasconcelos. He carried a small leather case. He climbed over the rail. Stop. He froze. Holmes stepped forward. Good evening, Mr. Vasconcelos. The man's face remained calm. You have made an error, Mr. Warmond. I rarely do. You cannot prove anything. Holmes smiled. I already have. Vasconcelos looked toward the sea. Then you know the truth. Most of it. And Sir Reginald? He will face the consequences of his actions. Vasconcelos laughed bitterly. You think justice waits 30 years? No. Holmes's expression hardened. But murder is still murder. Vasconcelos suddenly reached inside his coat. I drew my revolver. Don't. He stopped. For several seconds we remained frozen. Then he slowly removed his hand. Inside it was not a weapon. It was a folded paper. Holmes took it. His eyes moved rapidly across the page. Then his expression changed. What is this? Vasconcelos said nothing. Holmes looked at me. Watson, yes? This changes everything. The paper was not a confession. It was a letter, and it was dated 30 years earlier. The signature belonged to Josiah Hale. Holmes read aloud. If anything happens to me, the men responsible are not the only ones who know. I looked at him. Not the only ones? Holmes continued. There is another man who has profited from the arrangement. He stopped. Who? The final name had been partially destroyed. Only 3 letters remained. F.E.N. Dr. Fenwick, the ship's surgeon. I stared at Holmes. You think Fenwick was involved? I think he was connected to Kolkata. But he is a physician. A physician can also be a businessman. Vasconcelos spoke for the first time. Fenwick was there. 30 years ago? Yes. Why did you not tell us? Because I feared him. Holmes looked toward the dark sea. And now you fear him no longer? No. Why? Vasconcelos' voice became quiet. Because I know what he intends. What? To finish what we began. We returned to the main deck. Dr. Fenwick was nowhere to be found. Holmes immediately sent Captain Halloway to search the medical cabin. We followed. The door was locked. Captain Halloway forced it open. Inside, everything appeared normal, except for one thing. A medical case was missing. Holmes examined the cabinet, then the floor, then the sink. Watson, yes. Look at the basin. Watson, yes. Look at the basin. A faint brown stain remained around the drain. What is it? Blood. My heart sank. Whose? Holmes did not answer. He opened the doctor's desk. Inside lay a list of passengers. 3 names had been crossed out. Josiah Hale, Perkle Hale, and finally, Ashworth Blake. Holmes's face became grim. Fenwick intends to kill Sir Reginald. Tonight, before dawn, we ran. We reached Sir Reginald's cabin. The door was open. The room was empty. His chair lay overturned. The window stood open, and upon the carpet was a single dried tea leaf. Holmes knelt beside it. Then he saw something else. Atraiu. Tiny drops leading toward the stern. We followed. The trail ended beside the ship's rail. Beyond it, the sea. Holmes looked down. Then he smiled. Watson. What? He is alive. How can you know? Because if Fenwick had killed him, he would not have carried him here. Why? Holmes pointed toward the rail. The blood trail stops. And? It means the wound occurred elsewhere. He turned. He moved Sir Reginald. Where? Holmes looked toward the lower deck. The cargo hold. We found them beneath the main deck. Sir Reginald was bound to a chair. Dr. Fenwick stood behind him. A pistol rested against the merchant's head. You are too late, Mr. Holmes. Holmes stopped. No, Fenwick smiled. You know nothing. I know enough. You know a dead man, a ledger, and an old scandal. I know you were the physician who treated Josiah Hale 30 years ago. Fenwick's smile disappeared. I know you declared him dead. Silence. I know he was not dead when you examined him. Fenwick's hand tightened around the pistol. And I know, Holmes continued, that you altered the medical report. Sir Reginald stared at him. Fenwick laughed. So you discovered it? Yes. How? The tea leaf. Fenwick frowned. The tea? You used tea leaves to absorb the poison from the glass. Holmes's voice remained calm. You believed the residue would be mistaken for ordinary tea. Fenwick said nothing. You made one mistake. Holmes stepped closer. You used the same preparation 30 years ago. Fenwick's face changed. You remember? I remember everything. For the first time, Fenwick looked afraid. Holmes continued. Josiah Hale was not murdered by Blake, Caro, and Vasconcelos alone. He looked at Sir Reginald. They were guilty. Then at Fenwick. But you were the man who made certain there would be no survivor. Fenwick raised the pistol. Enough. At that instant, Captain Halloway and 2 sailors appeared behind him. Fenwick turned. Holmes moved. There was a struggle. The pistol struck the floor. Fenwick was thrown against the wall. Within seconds, he was restrained. Sir Reginald collapsed. The case was over, or so I believed. Holmes, however, was still staring at the old ledger. There is one thing I do not understand. What? He opened the final page. A name had been written there. A name none of us had expected. Ashworth Blake. Beneath it were 2 words. Not guilty. Holmes looked at me. Watson. Yes. Perhaps we've been wrong about Sir Reginald. And outside, beneath the endless Indian Ocean sky, the Coromandel continued toward London, carrying with her a secret that had survived 30 years. A secret that had almost claimed 3 more lives. And the truth, at last, had come to the surface. For several minutes after Dr. Fenwick had been secured, no one spoke. The only sound was the deep, rhythmic pounding of the Coromandel's engines beneath our feet. Sir Reginald remained seated, pale and exhausted. Captain Halloway stood guard over Fenwick. Caro and Vasconcelos watched one another with expressions of men who had suddenly discovered that the past they had spent 30 years burying had finally risen before them. But Holmes appeared interested in none of them. He was still studying the ledger. Watson. Yes. Something is wrong. You said that already. No. Holmes turned another page. I mean, something is missing. He held the ledger toward me. Look at the numbering. I examined the pages. The entries ran consecutively until page 47. Then came page 49. Page 48 is missing. Precisely. Perhaps it was removed 30 years ago. No. Holmes shook his head. The binding is recent. He ran a finger along the inner edge. This page was removed recently. By whom? That is the question. He looked toward Fenwick. The doctor remained silent. Holmes approached him. You removed page 48. Fenwick smiled. You cannot prove it. Holmes pointed toward his coat. Your left sleeve. Fenwick glanced down. A tiny fragment of paper protruded from the cuff. Captain Halloway seized him before he could move. Holmes carefully removed the fragment. It matched the ledger. He unfolded it. The writing was faded but still readable. And this time the name at the bottom was complete. Josiah Hale. Beneath it, payment received from Dr. Julius Fenwick. Sir Reginald closed his eyes. Fenwick said nothing. Holmes looked at him. So, the detective's voice became cold. You were not merely the physician. You were the fourth man. Fenwick laughed. It was a strange sound, not the laugh of a madman. Rather, the bitter laugh of a man who has finally stopped pretending. Yes, he said. I was there. Sir Reginald stared at him. Why? Fenwick turned toward him. Because you needed me. I never asked you to. You didn't have to. Fenwick's voice rose. You had money. Carroll looked away. Vasconcelos had contacts. Fenwick continued. And I had access to the medical records. Holmes remained silent. Fenwick looked at him. You see, Mr. Holmes, that is the part no one understands. I understand perfectly. No, Fenwick smiled. You understand the crime? He pointed toward Sir Reginald. But you don't understand the motive. Holmes raised an eyebrow. Then enlighten me. Fenwick looked at the sea. Josiah Hale discovered the accounts. Yes. He threatened to expose us. Yes. He demanded money. Carroll suddenly spoke. That isn't true. Fenwick turned. You know it is. No. Carroll shook his head. He wanted only the truth. Fenwick smiled. Truth has always been an expensive commodity, Holmes interrupted. And that is why you killed him? Fenwick's expression hardened. No. He looked directly at Sir Reginald. I killed him because he knew something else. What? Fenwick said nothing. Holmes stepped closer. What did Josiah Hale know? Fenwick's silence answered more than words could have done. Holmes's eyes narrowed. Then he turned toward Sir Reginald. You never told us everything. Then he turned toward Sir Reginald. You never told us everything. Sir Reginald's face collapsed. No. Holmes waited. What else happened that night? Sir Reginald lowered his head. There was a child. I stared at him. A child? Josiah Hale had a daughter. Holmes's expression changed. Where is she? Sir Reginald whispered. We never found her. Holmes immediately asked for the passenger manifest. Captain Halloway brought it. Holmes studied every name. 41 first-class passengers. He scanned the list, then stopped. His finger rested upon one name. Watson. I leaned over. Miss Eleanor Vale. Who is she? A passenger traveling alone. Holmes looked toward Captain Halloway. Where is she? Cabin 14. Holmes was already moving. We found Miss Vale sitting beside her window. She was a woman of perhaps 30 years, quiet, pale, with dark hair, and an expression of extraordinary composure. Holmes introduced himself. Miss Vale. Yes. You knew Perkle Hale. Her eyes changed. Only for an instant. No. Holmes smiled. Then why did he write your name in his notebook? She said nothing. Holmes placed the notebook upon the table. Her composure disappeared. He knew who I was. Who are you? She looked at Sir Reginald, then at Fenwick, then finally at Holmes. My name is Eleanor Hale. The room became silent. Josiah Hale was my father. I looked at Holmes. He appeared almost unsurprised. Why did you travel aboard the Coromandel? She answered quietly. To learn who killed him. Eleanor told us everything. Her father had not disappeared. He had been murdered. But before his death, he had hidden the original ledger. He had also written a letter explaining the entire scheme. That letter had eventually reached his daughter. I came aboard this ship because I knew Sir Reginald would be here, she said. And Perkle? My cousin. Did he know you were coming? Yes. Then why did he die? Her eyes filled with tears. He discovered that Fenwick had found me. Holmes looked at Fenwick. You knew Eleanor was aboard. Fenwick smiled. Yes. And you killed Perkle because he tried to protect her. Yes. Eleanor turned away. Holmes continued. But that leaves one question. Fenwick looked at him. What? Who wrote the letters? Fenwick smiled. I did. Sir Reginald stared at him. Why? To frighten you. Why the tea leaves? Because they reminded you of Kolkata. And the final letter? Fenwick's smile vanished. I wanted you to confess. Holmes nodded. But you made one mistake. Fenwick frowned. You assumed Sir Reginald was the only guilty man aboard. Holmes turned toward Eleanor. You were the true target. Fenwick said nothing. Holmes continued. Once Perkle discovered Eleanor's identity, you realized that the original crime could be exposed. He looked toward the ledger. So you killed him, and then planned to kill Sir Reginald. Fenwick's jaw tightened. 2 deaths would make the past appear to repeat itself. Holmes smiled. And that repetition would have been your downfall. Later that evening, Holmes and I stood alone upon the deck. The sea was calm. The moon had emerged from behind the clouds. You knew, I said. Not at first. When did you suspect Fenwick? The poison? The quinine? No, the method. Holmes leaned against the rail. The poison was applied to the rim of the glass. Yes. But there was no reason for Fenwick to know the precise position Hale would drink from. I frowned. Unless the murderer was a physician. Fenwick, exactly. Holmes continued. The medical knowledge allowed him to choose a poison that would initially resemble natural collapse. And the tea leaf? A theatrical signature. Then why did you suspect Vasconcelos? Because someone wanted us to. The cufflink? Deliberately planted. The missing ledger page? Also deliberate. And the locked cabin? Holmes smiled. The simplest clue of all. I don't understand. The door was never locked from the inside. What? The murderer used a duplicate key. But the key was found inside. The wrong key, I remembered. The brass key, precisely. Holmes looked out across the water. The murderer wished us to believe in an impossible room. And you never believed it. My dear Watson, he smiled. Impossible things are usually the most convenient lies. At dawn, Fenwick signed a complete confession. He named Caro, Vasconcelos, and Sir Reginald as participants in the original fraud. He admitted his own role in the death of Josiah Hale. He admitted killing Perkle Hale. And he admitted planning the death of Sir Reginald. Caro and Vasconcelos also confessed to their part in the original crime. Sir Reginald alone remained silent. I found him later that morning standing at the stern. You knew, he said. I looked at him. Knew what? That I was guilty. I knew you had something to hide. He stared at the horizon. I have spent 30 years believing money could bury anything, he sighed. But some debts do not disappear. No. He looked at me. Will Holmes expose everything? I answered honestly. Yes. He nodded. I suppose that is fair. The Coromandel reached London 6 days later. The case became a sensation. Newspapers reported the murder aboard the steamship. The old Kolkata scandal was exposed. The missing accounts were recovered. The fraud was uncovered. And the name of Josiah Hale was finally cleared. Fenwick was taken into custody. Caro and Vasconcelos were arrested upon arrival. Sir Reginald surrendered himself to the authorities. Eleanor Hale remained in England. She had come aboard the Coromandel seeking revenge. She left it with something far more valuable, the truth. Several weeks later, I found Holmes once again in his familiar chair at Baker Street. The fire burned brightly. London rain tapped against the windows. I placed the morning newspaper upon the table. The case is finished. Holmes looked up. Cases are rarely finished, Watson. What do you mean? The facts are finished. He picked up his violin. The consequences continue. I smiled. You cannot resist being philosophical. My dear Watson, philosophy is merely deduction applied to life. I poured myself a drink. And the tea leaf? Holmes smiled. A rather theatrical signature. You disliked it? On the contrary, he raised an eyebrow. It told me everything. How? A man who wishes to frighten his victim chooses something the victim will understand. And Sir Reginald understood the tea immediately. Because of Kolkata, yes. Holmes settled back. The murderer believed fear would force Sir Reginald into a confession, and instead, fear forced him to reveal the past. I considered this. So the letters were ultimately what solved the case. Holmes smiled. No, Watson. He looked toward the fire. The letters merely opened the door. And what solved it? The truth. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Outside, a carriage passed through the rain. Holmes reached for his pipe. Another curious matter, Watson. What? Have you noticed that every great mystery begins with something very small? The tea leaf? The tea leaf, he smiled. A tiny object, a forgotten detail, a word chosen carelessly, and from it, an entire world may be reconstructed. He struck a match. The flame illuminated his face for an instant. "Remember that, Watson?" I did, and I have never forgotten it. For somewhere between Kolkata and London, aboard a great steamship crossing the black waters of the Indian Ocean, a forgotten crime had waited 30 years for justice. And when that justice finally came, it arrived on the smallest of things, a single dried tea